even collectibles, you know, even an NFT wrapped in other assets, for example. So it's really, that's really my my extent of involvement with the project, is just simply consulting. I mean, there is always use case for USDV to be used in, you know, other industries and stuff, but unfortunately, this is the only way that we can, you know, we can kind of stay relevant. Not, I mean, me as in, you know, crypto people, I guess, is by essentially consulting on other projects to show that we've got the experience. So it's really nothing to do with Vamanti. It's just involvement in another project, just an hour or two a week to consult and keep them on the right track. But there's no doubt in my mind that USDV will be plugged into any product that wants to enter the United States. I think we really set in the standards, and it's just getting those standards approved by the SEC. You know, we reconnected with a lot of exchanges, you know, asking them about how to list USDV and stuff. Again, the biggest problem that we had since day one was always like, yeah, sure, you know, just provide like several million of liquidity. And while we're trying to explain to them, like, we're not just some random shitcoin that we can just give you $1 million. You know, if we give you a few million, that's essentially like giving you a few $1 million. We reconnected with a couple of market makers, because that's always a key issue when you work with exchanges. We have been looking at another DEX, but that kind of counters the regulatory issues, you know, about controlling who has access to it. Once an individual has access, you know, say like a large cap minter or large cap distribution, for example, it's going to be relatively difficult for us to argue that, you know, we are very AML compliant, etc. But one of the new partners that we just signed a couple of weeks ago, they're based out of Vietnam. That's going to help us a lot on the distribution front. There's a lot of cool stuff that we're doing with the bank over in Vietnam as well, which gives us a lot of regulatory landscape control. There's a few things that Tan and Steve are working on that I can't really go into too much detail, but it's pretty exciting. I'm hoping to get back to Vietnam pretty soon, so I can get a bit more involved in that, but it's not essential. I think Dubai might make a lot of sense moving forward. Everyone just seems to be flocking to Dubai. Not really a fan, but, you know, work is work. What else is there? Yeah, so Ashley, we had actually a very good few conversations over the past few weeks. So one thing that I'm helping Ashley on is essentially the terminology. You know, what exactly is USDV? You know, how does it affect people? How do we kind of fit into this crypto space? And then kind of just supporting on like the terminology and the slang, etc., and the messaging. Ashley's very much taking over the messaging. You know, how do we portray USDV? Because one of the biggest things I explained, I mean, this a month or two ago, when we first connected to Ashley, I was saying that the biggest issue that I personally had was getting journalists. You know, I mean, if you think about the number of firsts that we've done, right? We're a stablecoin that actually works with a bank, with a regulated government bank. You know, we have solid use case for the stablecoin, like our own payments platform, etc. Like, there's a whole bunch of firsts, but why are journalists just not picking it up, right? We can pay for PR posts, but if no one picks it up, what's the point? So she's really helping us in connections to, you know, other kind of journalists, not just Bloomberg, you know, like Financial Times and some relatively established kind of journalists in the corporate space, in the crypto space, etc. So it's looking good. I'm really happy Ashley's joined. She really knows a shit about how to portray the message and, you know, how to reach people en masse, you could argue. So yeah, so what I'll do now is I'll just scroll through. I think Adam collected the questions for me.
You could just have Ollie rapid fire all of them. Most of them are his anyway.
So again, sorry.
I said you could just have Ollie rapid fire the questions because they're all his anyway.
Fair enough, mate. I can't actually see who's messaged them. I've got Adam's post up here now. If anybody's got any questions or they want to expand on a question that's just been asked, feel free to jump in. So is the launch of USDC still expected to be the first quarter of 2022? And is there even a slight % chance that it could happen sometime before now on December 31st? I mean, it could. I mean, there's only like 2 or 3 things that we're waiting on. One is the liquidity, but Tan has taken care of that, as you know, as he does. The other issue is the distribution, which we've got that handled with the Vietnamese-based partner, the bank, etc. And then the only thing is the SEC regulation. So when they say, you know, they could turn around tomorrow and say, okay, guys, you know, proceed or whatever. But I'm not too sure because we're planning a lot of the marketing. But if they say tomorrow, like, you know, you guys are good to go, I don't see any reason. Because, for example, you know, if even though it's a Christmas period or maybe a quiet period in the West, you know, it's very much business as usual over in Asia. You know, their Christmas seems to be like, you know, February for Chinese New Year and stuff. So there isn't any reason why we couldn't start to get it out there and put, you know, put USDV in the hands of people. But, you know, the plan is to be in Q1 2022. But if we get the SEC approval tomorrow, then we've already got all of the main issues, you know, ironed out. Okay, next question. When USDV launches, are you targeting it to be launched on just one exchange at first and others? Or is it possible that it launches on more than one exchange the month of the launch? Okay, so how exchanges usually work is you meet or you have a phone call, you portray your project, the team behind it, you know, the use case. Then the exchanges will either say, yes, we're interested, or no, we're not. And then you discuss something called the liquidity. I'm sure you guys are aware of it. It's basically enough to cover the order books on both sides. It's normally a set number. It's normally like from 50K each side to $1 million per side. Then you have to integrate market makers, which basically manage the order books on both sides to keep the price stable. You know, this allows when people place an order that it's going to be automatically fulfilled. These market makers usually pay them a fee, and then they'll normally profit on the slippage. So then there's really good arbitrage for them, really, because they're just managing it. They're not able to manipulate the price, so to speak, because what eventually happens is you run out of liquidity on one side, or you know, the order book becomes too heavy on one side, and the market maker can't keep it. So it's really there just to stabilize it and make sure that an individual trader has the option to, you know, acquire the token set essentially. So when we launch, I mean, there's no reason for us to do like an IEO. You know, we're not, the token doesn't rise or fall in value. It's always one-to-one. So we would essentially be focused more on as many exchanges as possible. You know, when we've reconnected them and we've explained to them again, like, look, we can't give you several million, you know, liquidity. We're one-to-one backed. So Binance.us are interested because obviously we're a US regulated entity. FTX is interested. I think that we should really start trying to connect to things like eToro, Robinhood, you know, those kind of guys, because they already have crypto on their portfolio. So it makes a lot of sense for us to step in. Another issue we've kind of got is like players like USDC, like Tether are not that really interested in keeping market share. You know, they've had a good run. It's players like USDC that they're not exactly, you know, happy that another stable coin is entering, you know, especially one that apparently regulated. So they obviously get some pushback to the exchanges. But the large ones, Binance, for example, you know, the ones that are competing essentially, like FTX, Coinbase, and Binance, are pretty much all competing. Kraken was already acquired by Circle, etc., and they already have a banking charter. So they're not, I mean, you know, USDC is Circle, but they're not really the ones that are pushing, trying to push us out essentially. We haven't had any nefarious activity. We haven't had any, you know, other projects like slander us or try and keep us down or anything. But it's more just a case of, you know, barriers to entry in the space, so to speak. So we will be looking at as many exchanges as possible. Question, which exchange would be a #1 choice? So Personally, I like Binance. I love Binance. You know, it's been great for me over the years. For USDV, however, it would probably most likely be something like FTX or Binance.us even. Mostly just because, you know, of the US presence. There's a lot of collaboration there. So any kind of US-based exchange would be good. We did have one exchange or like one fake exchange try and scam us out of like 250K, but they didn't even get past the due diligence. So when we went back to them and was like, look, you know, all your paperwork's fake. Like this is not, you know, who are you guys basically? They just blocked us. But this was like months and months ago. So that was quite funny. But they really presented themselves, you know, they had like emails and stuff for an exchange I'm not going to mention. But we already spoke to them and let them know that there's, you know, there's like a team out there that's going around. But that was quite funny. So yeah, probably one of the US based ones would be good. Kraken, for example, would be a good one just because they're based in Canada. And then what we'll probably most likely do is focus on one key exchange in each region. As long as we have one, you know, like Huobi, for example, in Asia, or Indodax in Indonesia, you know, et cetera, et cetera. As long as we have one key partner, that'll allow us to essentially operate the, you know, a major off-ramp. Vietnam, we don't necessarily need because we're working with a financially regulated entity there. So it's going to be really interesting, you know, to kind of scope that out. We have a list in mind, but once we have the S1 cleared and then we get the liquidity kind of taken care of, we'll essentially be, you know, off to the races. Have any large investors reached out to you for meetings about the product, or does VMNT have to spend a lot of time trying to reach out to them? Does Tan attend these meetings alone, or does he ask you and DB to come along? It really depends.
You can't answer anything about investors approaching you if you're still in current negotiations. You can't answer that.
It's not. I mean, Tan does his thing. Tan's got a lot of stuff about Vamanti anyway. There's some partners that we meet together. If there's more of a technical angle that's needed to, you know, if there's more of a technical angle needed to essentially, you know, figure out their tech stack or see how we integrate or something, then I will join. In terms of investors, yeah, I mean, I can't really say anything about investors approaching us. Tan's arranged like a really good liquidity, like a really good liquidity provider for us, which is one of the key pain points, I guess. In terms of partners that approach us, you know, people that want to work together on us, or users of USDV or customers, we've had a lot of merchants that need to pay teams in Vietnam, because obviously that's the first use case that we've focused on. So we've got a few merchants, a few like kind of, you know, conglomerate clients that are looking to operate remittance more easily. Essentially, the biggest challenge or challenger, I should say, we have to that are these businesses based in Vietnam and across Southeast Asia that are looking to get money out of Vietnam, because obviously that's the more difficult process for a lot of operators. So getting the money into Vietnam is not usually an issue. We're just price competitive, right? We can just do it no matter what is out there, we can always do it at a cheaper price. Always. We can always able to undercut the competition. We don't want to do that, obviously, because, you know, we want to earn a lot of money. But that's kind of the benefit that we have. In terms of the individuals being able to, you know, get the money out of Vietnam, we have a good like kind of atomic swap structure. You know, we don't want to break any laws in Vietnam. We certainly don't want to break any laws in the US. So we have a very good kind of efficient structure for getting those funds out of Vietnam into another country. So that's essentially, you know, we're competing with these gray money market movers and that kind of stuff. But in terms of reaching out, we've got a few that come out to us. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of effort that needs to be spent on approaching these partners and merchants that we want to work with. But that's just business development, right? That's just kind of the name of the game. Okay, next question. When do you plan to tell the world about Vamanti? When will you ask for stablecoin USDV listing on CoinMarketCap? Is the USDV ticker already reserved or booked? No, the USD, it doesn't really matter. You can't really book a ticker in the crypto space. You know, you could have 5 or 10 versions. I mean, that's one of the kind of security issues on it. We can't approach CoinMarketCap They have their own list of approval. I did meet an analyst in Bali, funnily enough, last Saturday. So me and some of the kind of colleagues, we operate off-chain events. Off-chain are kind of global crypto community meetups, but there's no shills, there's no selling, it's a network mingle kind of event. There's I think they're in 25 cities now. So me and them just essentially set up the Bali one while I'm here, with the understanding that when I leave Bali, he will, essentially take over it. And I managed to meet a coin market cap analyst. And he was explaining more about the process. I mean, he was relatively new there, but he used to work for an exchange. So it was interesting to hear about the process. So you need like a set number of wallets, which is going to be a challenge for us because most of our, transactions are off chain. But there's ways around that. We've got a direct contact to CoinMarketCap, which is great. But in terms of the ticker, you can't really reserve a ticker, unfortunately. And when do we plan to tell the world about Vamanti? We already have, really. I mean, we haven't put a lot of efforts into the marketing space. We want the use case first. We're still very much following the plan. If we don't just want to be a PR stint, it's not so much a project that you just want to kind of push out. Just kind of say, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. We want to make a lot of leeway. So when we've got a lot of the, when we've got a lot of the use case nailed out, that's when the majority of the marketing is going to be coming. But the only thing that we're waiting for now is the SEC, kind of tick. But Ashley's got a very good, she's got a very good strategy in place. We've got some budget accumulated for it. So we're just waiting for the big green tick, essentially. Does the fact that you are focusing on other projects seemingly outside of Vamanti have an impact, if any, on the further development and rollout of USDV? None whatsoever. I mean, it's like saying, does someone who watches TV, an hour or two a week, does that affect the work? I disagree. I think it gives us a lot of insight into, it kind of allows us to remain relevant. It kind of allows us to remain relevant, right, in the crypto space, because obviously this NFT thing is taking off. It's a good excuse for us to push USDV into a lot of other projects, especially gaming ecosystems where there's a lot of transactions that are needed, where there's a lot of payments, there's a lot of transfer fees. So it's a very applicable use case for USDV. Again, I'm not focused on Vamanti stuff right now. I'm focused on USDV. A lot of the major work has already been done already, so it doesn't affect. I mean, USDV always comes first. But it's kind of an obsolete question, to be honest. So no, it doesn't really. Again, the only thing that we're waiting on is the SEC approvals, and then the liquidity providing, and then that's it. So no, it's fine. Could said other projects be synergistic with Vamanti's projects? Yeah, of course. I mean, anywhere that money is spent, USDV is a good use case. Anywhere that money basically USDV replaces money. The benefit of USDV is it essentially replaces fiat currency anywhere in the world. Tourism, business, remittance, payments, like anywhere USDV is. So that's really one of the key aspects of USDV. We're essentially trying to replace money. Is Frank Knoll still actively consulting with the company, or was his scope limited to the white paper? So Frank Knoll was brought on to consult the project, not necessarily the white paper. Obviously, his skill sets were very applicable when we were building out the white paper, because we've already been through 2 or 3 revisions. It just wasn't that good. So Frank Knoll really helped us, Tan and Frank really helped us kind of mold, the brand messaging around USDV. There was a couple of things that Tan wanted to remove to keep us kind of relevant, as we move forward, as we grow, as we scale, as the industry evolves, for example. We didn't want to come back and be continuously changing the white paper every month. So we'll probably have another revision next year when the regulation, scope changes. But Frank Knoll, as far as I'm aware, should very much, still be involved in the project. I mean, he really sees the value of what we're trying to build, right? An anti-inflationary, currency. It's never been done before for several reasons. And, we don't see why trying to integrate this blockchain tech, even though it is, if you think of blockchain compared to the film industry, we're still in black and white cinema, right? I think we're only just got sound now. But with this evolving Web3 space, and layer 2 tech, USDV is miles ahead of the competition. Like if you look at the current smart contracts for USDC and stuff, I mean, they're still using smart contracts from friggin' years ago. Ours is able to be constantly evolved. We're able to integrate new use cases and applicable, kind of functions within the smart contract itself. So we've built USDV to be scalable, to be relevant in 10 years. I mean, how are USDC going to handle, a one-to-one swap of everything, right? It's just not going to happen. So yeah, we're definitely, Frank Knoll's involvement is 100% still kind of within the network itself, the use case. I think that's what really attracted Frank, essentially, in terms of being an anti-inflationary stablecoin, an improvement of money, like the next generation of money. I think that's what really attracted him. So I'm really happy to have him on the team. There is a current trend in the DeFi world where across networks, there are protocols with the aim of becoming reserve currency. And the roadmap is generally to become an alternative to a stablecoin. This is in simple terms, projects like USDB being the first and currently most popular. They offer bonding of other cryptocurrencies, which are then held in their treasury. It's an interesting new concept. My question is, do you feel this could be a challenge for the future of stablecoins, or will they work alongside? Is bonding of other crypto assets something that could be offered on the Debasement platform? So, I mean, first of all, DAO, right? Decentralized autonomous organization. It's never going to be regulated. It's never going to be. What you have to convince someone then of, Stable DAO or Olympus DAO or one of the, DAI, for example, MakerDAO, you have to go to another person and say, I see value in that, right? I will take payment in that because I know that there's a buyer for that. For DAO, like it can never be regulated. So you're never going to be able to handle, a key business really as remittance. Say for example, a public company like Vamanti was to start, controlling a DAO, or to start, sending payments in a DAO. It's going to be extremely difficult for the SEC to come in and just, kind of justify it. I mean, there's no recourse. There's no, there's no protection for users. I mean, MakerDAO had tons of problems of people losing users. One of the benefits that we have with building a centralized ecosystem, a centralized platform, etc., is the security aspect, the support for it. If a user loses the phone and their private key is on that phone, they've lost their entire life savings, right? That's a very bad situation to be in. If you earn $150 a day, for example, $150 a month, for example, right, and then you've got $500 on your phone, that's essentially half a year's worth of effort, reward gone. So I don't honestly see DAOs integrating with an alternative to stablecoins at all. I mean, there may be some kind of variable assets out there that are backed, gold-backed stablecoins, for example, that can remain anonymous. But they'll never be able to work with, even if you're a US citizen and you're getting involved with an unregulated, payment DAO, whatever, you're already breaking the law, right? The only reason that we've progressed this far is because, the government can't essentially shut it down. But as they start to introduce CBDCs and regulated stablecoins and all these kind of other, regulated assets, the crackdown is going to come. Like the regulation is going to come for sure. So no, I honestly don't think DAOs are going to be. I think they have use cases, but in terms of like a stablecoin DAO, I think it's very difficult to kind of keep that relevant in the future. Will USDV be available to stake before the Debasement platform is released? Yes, I can't really mention anything of it right now, but one of the distribution partners that we're working with has a very good staking model. They have good farm projects, they have good yield farming, they have good liquidity pool providing. So just pay attention in the future, really. When do you expect businesses with large capital reserves to buy USDV and stake for yield? And will it be done in a way that is compliant for financial business? Will you be able to provide interested businesses with this information to prepare to get set up? So yes, we already have a few that have reached out to us. I mean, we have like some good liquidity providing partners, like Tan's arranged some good LPs. to kind of come and support us in a few different areas, not just USDV but also Vamanti itself. One of the difficult things that we have is working with regulation from different regions, right? Not just the SEC. So what you're essentially, the original way that we had it set up was an individual could come in, stake $1,000, and they would get an interest, right? It's still very much that procedure, but what it eliminates is essentially large cap firms coming in and saying, okay, I'm going to put in $10 million, right? And I'm going to get X amount of interest. If someone did that, then it kind of negates, the opportunity for the retail investors. So we really have to find that balance between who do we accept. It's not really a case of us. It's not really a case of us just accepting anyone. It's more of a case of us going through due diligence, making sure the funds are legit. We go through an AML policy, etc. And then another challenge is the distribution to retail or these large cap firms. So there's a few kind of key components that we have to wait really until the regulators come in and say, okay, this you can do this, you cannot do this, you can do this, etc. So we have a few things we have a few strategies laid out, just depending on what the answers come back with. But yeah, I mean, that's really it. We want the individuals to be earning the interest, not necessarily, the large cap firms. So there's an interesting setup really to provide liquidity on that front. What are your thoughts on the President Working Group's recommendation on how to regulate stablecoins, and how will USDV fit in with the proposed regulatory method? So I actually think so I don't think the regulatory methods are going to stay the same. I think it's mostly about just making it look like they're doing something. I reckon we won't get any solid regulation until Q2 next year, personally. But in terms of how we operate with the current regulations, like we follow them, pretty much to the T. We have very good legal counsel from 3 different regions that really pay attention to a lot of the stuff. I mean, Tan's essentially put together a working group himself, right? I mean, he's brought on Frank, he's brought on Matthew, Steve, Ashley, me, right? So Tan's essentially got his own kind of, working group, if you call it that. And did Frank, I think you mean role, did Frank and Noel have a role in this working group? That I'm not too sure of. You can always ask him yourself. That I'm not too sure of. But yeah, I mean, the current regulation, we have to follow the regulation. So we just kind of match our system to kind of be future proof. I mean, this is one of the reasons why the smart contract has, essentially upgradability. We need to be able to essentially activate or stop certain processes from happening. How does USDV protect stakers in US dollar countries from inflation or debasement of the USD? So it's anti-inflationary in terms of it earns interest, right? So it goes up in value compared to other currencies, than essentially, essentially going down with liquidation. So what it means is, if you hold your USD, it's not going to decrease in value. You actually get more USD to counter the inflation rate. Also, for USD countries, if you're working with, if you hold fiat in your account, you get the FDIC insurance, etc., etc. Loving the new Twitter profile picture. How much money did you spend on buying all the new followers? Honestly, about $20 for about 2,000. But what that actually does is trigger the algorithm. So you may have noticed an argument with some video game devs from the UK. This was really just to kind of push engagement. Didn't realize I'd get so many retweets and that kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to stay on top of it. So this is really just to push my profile out into the space a bit more. This was actually, some suggestions. So yeah, $20, 2,000, not so bad. Any chance launch roadmap has accelerated since bringing on DB? Is the stablecoin and platform launch ahead of schedule? Bring on DB. Who's DB? Oh, Daniel Borders. So gotcha. I was like, DB? I'm not too sure. I mean, Daniel kind of handles a different aspect to USDV, so I can't really comment on that, unfortunately. Launch roadmap is accelerated. Well, I mean, there's a few things that's waiting on. One was the liquidity providing. Tan took care of that with the LPs. The other one was the distribution partners, which we've nailed down. And then the final one was essentially I mean, obviously avoiding the tech stack, because, obviously that's kind of different kettle of fish. But it all revolves around the SEC approval. All we're waiting now is I mean, it's the same issue that we had with the white paper. We're just essentially waiting for the legal team to nod the head, give us a go-to and a clap. And that's pretty much it. Is the stablecoin and platform launch ahead of schedule? Well, no. I mean, I wouldn't say it's ahead of schedule, because we're waiting on stuff, right? But is it? Are we behind schedule? I wouldn't say so. I mean, we have all the partnerships in place. We have tech stack ready to go. Most of it is just integrating into the partners platforms now, and kind of integrating our kind of regulated on-off ramps into other tech stacks. We just haven't opened store yet, right? Essentially, what we've done is we've built a chain, like a franchise stores, and we've deployed those. We just haven't pulled the shutters up yet. It is probably a good analogy. So we're just waiting for, essentially the regional manager, if you will, to, just say, okay, everyone, let's go to town. So I wouldn't say it's definitely not ahead of schedule. It's definitely not behind schedule. We're just waiting. We're kind of making progress before we get the approval, because what we don't want to do is just sit around twiddling thumbs, until the SEC say, yeah, okay, go ahead. We know what they're going to say, right? There's nothing that they can reject us for. So we're just kind of in the background, kind of spreading out the network, if you will, and getting things integrated before they can say that we can pull up shutters. Are the concerns over inflation a headwind for USDV? Well, I mean, anything that talks about inflation or shitty stable coins, or anything like regulation, etc., it's always a good talking point. So this is one of the things that we went through with Ashley. Basically like how to, what kind of spin do we put on it? What kind of articles are good sharing? What kind of content should we be putting out? Should we be ignoring? And the good answer is there's no content that we really should be ignoring, right? Because if it's negative on stable coins or crypto or regulation, etc., it makes us look good. And if it's negative on fiat and inflation and like, oh my God, the world is ending, that's great for USDV, right? So there isn't any content that we should be wary of, because all of it is a good comment to come back to USDV. Which network have we moved across to for USDV? So I see someone posted Stellar. I mean, we are looking at Stellar. We're looking at Binance Smart Chain. We're looking at Polygon. We're looking at Algorand. We're basically network agnostic, right? We can work on anything. What we are tokenized USD. So the smart contract is able to work on multiple networks. It's really not as, how do I say, it's really not as, solidified as to one network that we have to work on. Different regions will have.
Sorry, is that unique to you? Is that unique to USDB?
Well, no. I mean, if you look at USDC, they work on Ethereum, they work on Stellar, they work on X, they work on Y. Like it's not really. I mean, blockchain has advanced so much that we don't have to just be stuck on one network. But what's more important is when you build it from the ground up, that you plan around being able to integrate. So USDV is just tokenized USD, right? When we start to pull in a different fiat basket like Japanese yen, like euro, like GBP, Swiss francs, when we pull in, these different fiat baskets, like for China, for example, we have to work on the BCN network, right? Which is like the government-owned one. In Europe, they obviously have their favorites of network. In the US, there's kind of a plethora, right? There's thousands of network options out there. What we're doing is picking the ones that we have good, solid, not just relationships, but good, solid use case that complements their ecosystem. Like Stellar, for example, there's a bunch of tools on Stellar that we integrate with very, very well. With Algorand, there's a bunch of projects on there, right, that could really, really benefit from using USDV. So it's not really a case of saying we've switched network. We technically can work with any network. The reason that we minted in Ethereum was the existing infrastructure for Ethereum, is so integrated into the industry. A lot of the auditors really, specialize in Ethereum smart contracts, for example. Like the providers like Fireblocks or Prime Trust, because we issued an ERC20, it was much easier for us to get approval for a lot of integrations, right? I mean, you can imagine how many, not just stable coins, but how many, crypto projects go to these companies and say, hey, we'll give you, $1 million to join to Fireblocks, right? And Fireblocks just turn them down, right? They just straight away just say, nah, like we're not interested, So the fact that we've been able to get, a stable coin with essentially zero, liquidity integrated just shows you how much, demand there is for a regulated stable coin. The fact that we're able to go and make these partnerships when, we haven't even opened the shutters yet, so to speak, should give you, kind of an idea of the demand and the relationships that we have in the industry. So it's really not a case of being, switching networks or anything. It's really just a case of which networks that we partner with that we can benefit, right? We don't just want to throw USDV everywhere. That's not going to benefit. We have to have key relationships. We have to be supported by the network that we join, right? So Stellar internal promoters, Algorand internal promoters, any other network that we work with, will work with us. So yeah, I mean, in terms of, we'll always be available on Ethereum. That's just like an industry standard. But in terms of which other partners that we're working with, just pay attention really in the future. Okay, one question to add. When CoinMarket, I already mentioned that, Gabriel, sorry, mate. One question to add, do you feel that it would be practical for companies to pay employees in USDV stablecoin in lieu of traditional USD bank checks? If so, would you be able to provide any clarifications to how a company will be able to do this? Sure. So when someone sends you a bank transfer, right, and then you check your bank app, and then you go to the bank and you withdraw cash, right? How is that any different from sending USDV? Right? There's pretty much the exact same process. If someone gets paid now by Cash App or Venmo, same thing. Again, tokenized USD, it's pretty much replaces existing currencies. So even though, say for example, a CBDC comes out, it's always going to have, there's always going to be a use case of privatized stablecoins. It's like saying, because we have debit cards, we don't need credit cards. Right? It's a different kind of financial instrument. If someone wants to do remittance and they don't want to go through the massive headache of, going through the CBDC kind of rulings, etc., they can always use a privatized currency. They can always use a privatized service, Western Union, etc., etc. So there's always going to be a use case for privatized stablecoins. And essentially the process is what you do now with USD.
Warren, to touch back on that question now. So
yeah.
Say the company is paid in regular bank checks by its clients. Now they would have to take those bank checks, put them into an account, have the company open up its own USDV account, and then they would be able to pay their employees through the USDV account itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so as soon as the money hits the bank account, when they send that payment, if it depends, right? If someone's in the US, it doesn't really make sense for them to take the money out of the bank account to obtain USDV to send it. But say, for example, maybe they have a limitation on the account. Maybe they have, employees in other parts of the world. There's a few use cases really for obtaining USDV. But if someone, puts their money, say they get the bank check, and they deposit into their bank, and if they have their employees by bank transfer already, say for example the bank charges 3%, if the staff turn around and say, hey, would you legacy banks refuse to adopt USDV? So if our fees are like 10 cents, right, it makes much more sense for them to go to the employer and say, hey, can you pay me in USDV? Because you guys are paying 5% or whatever it is for a bank transfer, right? But if you essentially send us, using this solution, then we all save money. And to be honest, that's just, that's kind of a no-brainer in my opinion.
Thank you, Warren.
Does anyone have any questions that weren't written down? Awesome. Alrighty then. I really appreciate your time, guys. I don't want to keep you guys up too late. Let me know if you want me to try and arrange one like a few hours earlier, maybe 3 or 4 hours earlier next time, to try and accommodate some other people from different countries. But I really appreciate it. And remember, just tag me. Just if you got any questions, just tag me in the group. I promise you I'll get around to them. But if there's nothing else, then adios. Unless...
No, thank you, Warren.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Great call. Very informative.
Cheers, guys.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the call, Warren.
Cheers, Brew. Cheers, guys.